This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Porto 1, Liverpool 5. A dominant display for the Reds out in Portugal. Welcome along to the debrief here on the Blood Red channel with myself, Clarke, and our Blood Red writer, Matt Addison. Well, Matt, everyone was kind of saying in the build-up to this game that the games of old of Liverpool going out to Porto and putting a few goals on them, it wasn't going to be the case. I have to say I was in that camp, but a very, very comfortable win in the end.
Yeah, exactly the same as it has been in the past, to be fair. I remember, we said the similar sort of thing really heading into the other two games that Liverpool have played against Porto and absolutely dominated them. And it was exactly the same tonight. I mean, it could have been a lot more, in fairness. I still want Liverpool to be a little bit more ruthless at times. There was still, a few minutes before half-time, you're thinking it's only 1-0. Have Liverpool, missed a couple of opportunities that they should have scored. But yeah, in the end, it was really comfortable. Loads of positives to take, and Liverpool, most importantly, have taken charge of the group. I think, the late goal for Atletico Madrid in the other game isn't the worst thing. It means they're now 5 points ahead of the team in third place. So, yeah, it's all looking good for Liverpool. And wouldn't it be nice if they could actually get this wrapped up quickly and have a couple of games to spare at the end? I mean, obviously, don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves. Obviously, Atletico Madrid twice now to come up next, but yeah, in terms of how it went tonight, couldn't have been much better, I don't think.
Now, if you want to let us know your thoughts, do get commenting away in the chat box. We'll try and get a few of them on screen if we can through the course of the time we're here on the debrief. But Matt, it was one of those where I suppose opening 20 minutes of the game, it was really crucial for Liverpool to silence the home crowd and hit the front. And as soon as they had done that, it seemed as though Porto weren't really going to have much sort of coming back the other way.
No, it's a strange one. I think Porto did come out and did okay, as you say, for that first 20 minutes. But after that, just completely lost their way. And I think Liverpool made them look at a worse side than what they are. I don't think we should forget that. Porto are unbeaten so far this season. They've been in good form. They have had one or two results where they've won late on, and maybe on another occasion it could have been a draw, and maybe they'd have a couple less points. But they do have some really good players. I think Otavio going off earlier on in the half, did he last 15 minutes? Probably didn't help them hugely. He's one of their best sort of creative players. Obviously was linked with Liverpool in the summer, and obviously Luis Diaz as well looked really good, but James Milner was superb against him. So I think if you nullify both of those threats, it just stops them getting up the pitch really, and that's what we saw. And obviously when you've got the quality of Curtis Jones and Mohamed Salah and even Sadio Mane at times, who I thought was pretty poor, for large parts of it, but did show little glimpses here and there. Liverpool were just far too good for them ultimately. And yeah, I think the biggest compliment you can say for Liverpool is that they bounced back from the weekend and they made what is a really good Porto side actually look really quite poor.
Yeah, made them look very, as you say, I was going to say average, you say poor. I think we're probably both right in respect of that. But I mean, you look at the goal scorers, there was 2 for Salah, there were 2 for Firmino and Sadio Mane also on the score sheet. But all of the comments we're getting coming in, Matt, all about a certain Curtis Jones. I know you guys spoke about him on the Liverpool.com podcast this week, but this guy's had to wait in the wings this season for his opportunity. But much like early part of the season when he's being given the opportunities, he's shown he can be trusted. And he's adding something to that Liverpool midfield that hasn't been there for a little while in terms of a real goal threat.
Yeah, I mean, what a player. People have kind of forgotten about him, really, I think, in the early parts of this season. And tonight was a massive reminder of why you can't forget about him. I think we'll get the assist for 3 of the goals, played a part in the last goal as well. So 4 out of the 5 were pretty much down to him. And I think the crucial thing for me, and the thing that we did speak about on the podcast you mentioned, people want to check that out. It's across our YouTube channel. And, the thing that we spoke about there was about him playing further forward, potentially playing off that left-hand side. But what he did tonight was that role. He did that dropping of the shoulder, did all of the Sadio Mane thing, but he also played in a position in midfield where he was able to do the defensive job as well. And I think that is, as we said the other day, the perfect Jurgen Klopp midfielder. I think that's what he wants from his ideal midfielder. He wants him to be able to press and do all of that sort of thing off the ball, but he also wants him to contribute going forward. And obviously, there's players who don't necessarily contribute. Gini Wijnaldum was a brilliant Jurgen Klopp midfielder who didn't necessarily contribute. But obviously, if you've got a player who can do all of those things and score goals, that's never going to be a bad thing. And yeah, I think Jurgen Klopp described it as an almost perfect Liverpool midfield performance at the weekend from Curtis Jones, but this was just on a completely different scale. I mean, it's a completely different team that they were playing against, a much better team in terms of the quality all over the pitch, but in midfield in particular, I thought Porto did okay there tonight, but Curtis Jones was just a class above, and to put in a performance like that in the Champions League is a real marker. I think we saw a lot last season. You think of the goals that he scored and the performances he put in the Champions League, but there was never anything as good as this. This was really, really good from him, a real step forward. And yeah, I think for Manchester City, I'm sure Jurgen Klopp in his head would have had a team in mind heading into this one of what he was going to do against Manchester City, but I think it'd be very, very harsh to not have Curtis Jones in that midfield. Again, I know it's an altogether different task. It's a very difficult task to come up against Bernardo Silva, who I thought was excellent against Chelsea, Kevin De Bruyne, all of those sorts of players. But yeah, when you've put in a performance like that, you can't really take him out, I don't think.
No, and just to kind of add to that, I think it was a kind of coming of age for him, wasn't it? And when you think of the prospect of when Harvey Elliott gets back to full fitness off the back of his injury, the prospect of those two playing as, I suppose, free eights in a Liverpool midfield going forward is going to be a real tantalising prospect. Certainly the way in which in the first goal he kind of did that thing that Elliott had been doing early part of the season, but moving out to the right and Trent was coming infield. It was for Andy Robertson to come infield this time, and he's a player who looked so much more energised with Curtis Jones on that left-hand side of that midfield three in front of him. And maybe it is going to be a time where we see beyond kind of Jordan Henderson, the likes of Jones and Elliott coming into that Liverpool midfield, say playing in those number 8 positions with Fabinho holding that midfield, not too dissimilar to how Man City have the likes of sort of Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne really getting all around the pitch and just leave the defending to one central midfield player, nominally Rodri. Maybe Liverpool will kind of look to replicate that, but with Fabinho in that sitting role.
Yeah, and Fabinho, I think, is far more suited to it and far more mobile than what Rodri is. I think that's a thing that Fabinho can and has shown in the past that he can do, and it's such an exciting prospect to think about him being in that position with those two just running riot in front of him. And I think that the really interesting thing was what he did to Andy Robertson for me. I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on James Milner shortly, but I thought Robertson was a lot better today than he was the other day. Certainly defensively he was, but even going forward, I thought, with Curtis Jones in front of him, he just looked a lot more free, looked able to get forward without the sort of need of needing to get back necessarily because he had cover and all of that sort of thing. And I think, there's been a fair bit of talk about Andy Robertson this season. I think, to be honest, he's struggling a little bit off the back of Sadio Mane struggling in front of him. But when you've got Curtis Jones there to sort of help out on that left-hand side, I think we saw tonight a better version of Andy Robertson as well. So, yeah, the ultimate compliment, isn't it, for Curtis Jones? Not only are we talking about him, but we're talking about other players being improved as a result of the performance that he's put in. So, yeah, brilliant from all of them on the left-hand side, relative certainly for Sadio Mane compared to what it's been. I even thought there was, a fair few positive signs for him on a night where he wasn't particularly brilliant, but probably better than what he has been at times this season.
Yeah, let's move on to Mane then, because for me in recent times, he's one of those players. I think his style when he's missing chances and his technique looks as though he's a player kind of out of sort of kilter, but at the same time, he doesn't not get chances in form or out of form. The ball is like a magnet to him. And for me, in the last few games, he's kind of just been trying a bit too hard. Yet today, for his goal, it was one of those that fell completely to him and he just had to tap it in. And I suppose the caveat should be that poor Diogo Costa in goal for Porto, that they probably would have been better off with Diego Costa, wouldn't they?
Yeah, no, as much as I'm saying, he's been poor at the start of the season, and I think he has, relative to his general overall performance of what we've seen. I think, what is that, 3 goals in the Premier League, and did he score against Milan? I'm not sure, but at least one in this game. I mean, he's still getting himself into the positions, he's still scoring goals and performing well in that sense. I don't think his overall game is anywhere near what it would be, and I think Manchester City would have been far more scared of him a couple of seasons ago going into this weekend's game than what they are now. But I suppose if you're getting yourself into those positions, you're still scoring the goals, there is a kind of argument that he's doing everything that he needs to do. I think there's still far more from him to come. I think there were certain times where he just never even looked like he was going to beat his man. He just didn't quite have the close control or the guile to be able to create, particularly in the first half of the first half when Liverpool were under the cosh a little bit. But yeah, I think that there's a lot more to come from him. But the fact that he's still scoring goals, even at a time where we're saying he's really struggling, is just a testament really to the quality and the ability that he's got.
And now then, I suppose, focus switches to Manchester City. Be hard for Jurgen Klopp maybe not to just stick with the same side, especially given if Trent is going to be missing the game.
Yeah, I think so. I think the team, when you looked at it, was pretty much as strong as it could have been. That was obviously designed to put a little bit of momentum into Liverpool ahead of the weekend. I think obviously there's enough of a gap between Porto and City for these players to have a rest. And like you say, there's no reason to change it really. I think James Milner was superb, did a really good impression again of Trent Alexander-Arnold. The second time he's done that this season. I thought he was superb against Crystal Palace and Wilfried Zaha, but tonight, a different stage, a better player, I think, it's fair to say, in Diaz, and certainly a bigger stage in which to perform. And he just did the exact same again. He's very, very straightforward, very easy to just throw in, and obviously had a bit more time to prepare for this one. Not too much more time, but only had a couple of hours to prepare for the Crystal Palace game. One's been too much longer, in fairness, for him ahead of tonight with the injury to Trent. Obviously, he didn't travel yesterday when the rest of the players came over, so he would have known that he was in as a result of that. But he's just so dependable. Whatever position you put him in, he just looks, like he's been playing it forever. And I've written in a piece, just on the whistle there for Liverpool.com that, he's a 35-year-old that looks 25. He looks like he's played right back all of his career. He's got loads of energy. And I think, maybe a month ago, if you just said Jack Grealish or Raheem Sterling at the weekend will come up against James Milner at right back, I think a fair few Liverpool fans would have been very, very concerned about that. But I'm not too sure that there'll be any concerns off the back of these two performances. Crystal Palace was a really good start where he did a lot going forward. The same again tonight. If he can just do a similar job on Sunday, you've really got to fancy Liverpool, because there wasn't too much of a difference, to be honest, between what Trent gives Liverpool and what James Milner did tonight, which is quite incredible, really.
No, and as you say, now looking at the group, Liverpool with maximum points, Atletico Madrid with their late win at AC Milan, second on 4 points, Porto with a point, obviously, from their draw with Atletico in the opening game, and AC Milan with no points as of yet in the Champions League group stage. And elsewhere, with talking of the game at the weekend in mind, PSG beating Man City 2-0, and Man City, off the back of what seemed a confidence-boosting win at Chelsea, now actually come into the game at Anfield off the back of defeat.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst team to lose against, is it, with all of the players that PSG have got? It's a difficult result for them. I think for Liverpool, you'd have to hope that the game against PSG took a bit more out of City than the Porto game took out of Liverpool. And that's the one thing that you'd look at in terms of that ahead of the weekend. But yeah, for City, it's been a tough week, hasn't it? Off the back of, obviously, Chelsea at the weekend, where I thought they were brilliant. Obviously, we've not seen the PSG game as a whole tonight, but it doesn't sound like they played particularly well. I think, for Liverpool to be the next opponents, to have Chelsea, PSG, and then Liverpool within the space of 3 days is a real test for them. So, yeah, I think we'll learn plenty at the weekend. I think Liverpool will go into it with loads of confidence. I think City will turn up at Anfield and probably, a point wouldn't be the worst result for them. But I think Liverpool have got to go for it. And I think it'd be interesting to see what Jurgen Klopp does, who he picks. As we said before, I expect it to be pretty much the same team as what was played today. You look at someone like Milner, I think came off after about 65 minutes. Obviously, that's with one eye on the weekend. And he basically said before the game that Trent wouldn't be ready for that one. So, yeah, a few different decisions to be made for Liverpool and for Jurgen Klopp. But, yeah, I think after Brentford felt a little bit deflating, I think, for Liverpool at the weekend in terms of the way that game went, the way that this one tonight has gone has really turned that around quickly. So, yeah, plenty of positives. Liverpool in control and should be absolutely full of confidence ahead of Sunday.
Yeah, certainly. And of course, the Blood Red channel will be home for all of the build up towards Sunday's game with Manchester City. Of course, Analysing Anfield will be with you tomorrow. But before all of that, stick with us here on Blood Red. Jurgen Klopp's post-match press conference is to follow after what has been a rout out in Porto, a 5-1 win for the Reds. From myself, Guy Clarke, and Matt Addison, thanks for joining us. It's bye for now.